Now we will discuss 4 whiteboard techniques. Keep it clean, marker tips, writing style, and etiquette.
There's a reason why this is called a whiteboard. In the old days, they called it a blackboard and used chalk, right? So here's one thing that comes up. You see this drawing here? What would you say is wrong with that drawing? Around the words?
It's not clean.
Yeah.
It's not clean. It's basically, it's a gray board.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes if you don't keep your whiteboard clean, the information's really not going to pop out, especially for the students in the back row. So it's important ahead of time to give your whiteboard a really nice cleaning. So you see how nice and white this is? It makes things kind of pop. You notice this pen, it's a blue pen, right? It is a whiteboard marker. Now if I put a line like that with that pen, now watch what happens if I use the other blue marker. So they're both blue markers, they're both made for the whiteboard. But now watch what happens when I go to erase.
Oh.
Do you see a difference?
Yeah, it doesn't come off very well.
Yeah, so it turns out that these ones right here, these ones that are called marks a lot, they're pretty common at Bethel, but some whiteboards do not cooperate with this marker, and you'll get streaks like that. So let me just show you a couple more slides. So you see in this slide, again, he's whiting on the board, right? And see, he's got that same problem where he doesn't want to erase.
Right.
But now, see if you can see in the next slide the important detail. See what it says? So it actually says on that particular board, they recommend using Expo markers.
Nice.
Now, I'm not a salesman for Expo, but I have found that many of the whiteboards we have at Bethel, you cannot erase stuff unless you use the right marker. So if you find it's always streaking, that might be the problem. So then you have to put a little bit of spray up there, which we kind of hate to do in class because it smells so bad. Okay, now, another thing is you start writing something, you're like, 1 plus 1 equals, and then you're talking to the audience and you're doing this, you're gesturing. Now, do you see a problem with what I'm doing right now?
Yes, you're drawing out the marker.
Oh, yeah.
This is what you don't want to be doing because if you dry out the marker, which actually happens pretty quick,
Yeah.
it's time to go in the trash can because it will stop working. Okay, now one other thing with technique is how you write. So now picture, suppose you got someone in the back of the audience, they're 20 feet away. If I come over here and I write, like that, is there going to be a problem with that?
Yes.
Can't see it.
Yeah, you can't see it, right? So do you notice, earlier on in our demonstration how big I was writing? I was doing like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But it turns out that really, if you try to get more than about 10 words up on a whiteboard at a time, you're going to lose people. It's really not big enough.
Okay.
Now here's the other thing. Some of us like to write like this. Now what kind of writing is that?
Script.
Script. Now, what's the classic problem with using script?
It's not legible enough.
In some cases, it's not legible enough. Like what you learned in school with like 2-inch tall block letters, Ed, actually works pretty good on whiteboard. Now, I'm not going to say 100% of the time, because once in a while I've seen sisters, maybe they're trying to teach you how to make brownies. And maybe writing the word brownie in script in brown looks really pretty or something like that. It might be worth it as a technique, but generally speaking, block letters is a better way to teach with a whiteboard. And try to keep them, if people are straining, you're writing too small. I've tried really hard so far in this discussion to look at you and then draw and then look at you and then draw. Why do you think I'm kind of concerned about not like turning my back to you and drawing?
You're gonna lose us.
Right, and frankly, I mean, I don't know what my back looks like, but I'm guessing my front looks better than my back, generally speaking. So if I turn my back to you and talk to the whiteboard, I'm really going to be cutting into things a little bit, right? Now again, that's not a 100% rule. You know how the school guidebook talks about like use of notes? When you use notes, there are times it's okay to look down at your notes and do something, right? Do you remember when you should always look at the audience if you're using notes? Rachel?
When you're trying to make an impression or
Yeah.
emphasize the point.
Yeah, like maybe a conclusion or, 2 + 2 equals. You want to be looking at the audience when you say 3 because you need them to be a part of it, right?
Yeah.
Well, the same thing with drawing. Sometimes when you're drawing on the whiteboard, there's something that's so important, you almost have to draw it and then turn to the audience. But let's illustrate something that's not important.
When telling a story while sketching, it is permissible to face the whiteboard because you are not discussing a main point. We hope these tips and techniques will help you to use the whiteboard in your next class.